We're up to our entire interview with John Cafferty of John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book. There have been a lot of great hits. Eddie and the Cruisers in the early 80s, of course, with On the Dark Side, the big hit from there. But there was also Tender Years, Tough All Over, CITY, Small Town Girl, Voice of America's Sons, and Hearts on Fire. We talk about Eddie and the Cruisers, how to be a perfect bar band, his comparisons to Springsteen, and a lot more in this clip. I've been watching the documentary. I know it was the documentary on your band. I know it was like it's a little rough as far as the documentary, but it's cool. Like Dennis, what is it, Laverty put it together?
Oh yeah. There was a guy in New Jersey who did. He actually did a few documentaries on various guys down on the Jersey Shore, and we're a Rhode Island band, but we've always been a part of that Jersey Shore scene, and people down there sort of brought us in as cousins from up the coast, and one of the guys that used to follow that scene, he made a few documentaries and made one on our band. I don't even know where he got all the footage and stuff. We didn't really have anything to do with it, other than we were standing in front of cameras 40 years ago, and someone
it's great,
recorded us.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. It tells a pretty interesting story. It's of course, like every story, it's like there's always different versions of it. But that's a pretty good one though. That's a pretty good version of the tale.
The greatest hits package. So tell me about that.
Right now on either Amazon or any of the services that sell CDs, and they can also go on iconoclassicrecords.com, Iconoclassic. But we're very excited, and it's a great picture of who our band has been over the years. It focuses on our whole recording career, and the highlights, and also some of the other recordings that we made that maybe didn't see the light of day or as much light as we would have liked. It's all part of it, and doesn't emphasize one over the other, because we found over the years that some of the really good songs that we play, they weren't singles. They weren't songs that got radio exposure. But when people listen to the records or they come out to the shows, I mean, they have some meaning. So it's we're so thrilled to have it out. To be honest with you, we have sort of a cloudy history with record companies and stuff. Can't say good or bad. It's just cloudy.
There's so many bounces, unlucky, some lucky bounces. I mean, obviously the soundtrack was a huge surprise, and it was great because it introduced you to a lot of people. But so much crap can happen with a band that the pieces don't fall together sometimes. And you guys had some good and bad luck, right?
Well, I guess with anything, when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, when you take your ego out of it, our life was bigger than our dreams, really was, and it was, we walked into it for one reason, that, music just made my foot tap. I don't know why, I was walking down the street down the beach and with a baseball bat over my shoulder and a glove stuck on the handle when I was 9 years old, and walked by my cousin Alan's house, and he had one of these suitcase record players, and he was playing Dwayne Eddy Rebel Rouser, and the sound of the guitar and the saxophone and the beat of the song just sort of stopped me in my tracks. I didn't really even know why, it just sort of did something to me, and that's the way music was. I wanted to play music after that. I don't know why I did. I just did. It just made me feel better. And, that's the choice that we make when we choose to be musicians. And the only guarantee is simply that you get to play music, not that you're going to be famous or you're going to play Madison Square Garden or you're going to do any of that stuff. It's that you get to play music. And on some level, that has to be enough, because if it is, then that's the prize. That's the prize, that you're up there on a nightly basis with a magic wand, and if you do it right, and you can, if you do it right, you take your ego out and you let the music, do what it does. It's you can lift people's hearts, and in return, it will lift yours, and that's really the prize of it, I think.
When I saw you up there,
the rest of it's a roller coaster ride,
When I saw you up there talking to Dick Clark, I remember, and I do this a lot when I'll see a band just before I talk to them. By the way, you look great. I should mention that. I don't know what you're doing, but you look great.
Wow, must be this light bulb that my wife put in this lamp over here.
I'm pointing. Take that. But when I saw you there and you're talking, and Dick always had a reputation of talking to everyone in the band. It was really nice. That kid that started
to us, by the way, not to interrupt, but he really was wonderful to us. He liked our story. He liked our story. He liked the fact that we had been at it a long time, and we were together almost a dozen years before any of the records. We were bar band extraordinaire up on the East Coast, and he really liked the fact that we were on that ride, and we grabbed the golden ring, going by, and then the platinum one. Who knew? But he liked it.
I like the fact that he said, "You guys live together. How'd you not want to kill each other?" Never said that. But that's
we were
another
very
thing.
Lucky. Our band always had a great chemistry. Very good guys, good-hearted guys, and all in it for the same reasons. We just music just made us feel a certain way, and it was something that we could be proud of, put our hearts and soul into, on a daily basis. I think that's what anybody wants in any walk of life. You just want to feel good about what you're doing. You want to be able to connect to it, so that it feels like you when you're doing it. Whatever that may be. And that's what music did for this particular group of guys that I've been blessed to be a part of a band with for decades.
You guys were playing at the time of Eddie and the Cruisers. Were you guys was it a lot of college, because they were looking for a specific sound? I remember Dion and the Belmonts, Springsteen. They were looking for, I forget who the other one was, the Doors. They were looking for something, an amalgamation of all those things. And as the wiki page says, and correct me, he says, the guy just says, "Well, I know exactly who you need." And did it go down like that? Or I know he had seen, was he the same guy who had seen you a year before? Because you told in a story once that someone had come and seen you, and then a year later or whatever it was, he comes back and says, "Hey, Eddie and the Cruisers movie, blah, blah, blah." How did that go down?
Well, as legend has it, and you just never know. But as legend has it, the guy who was walking down the street, he was walking down with Bleecker Street. And his name was Kenny Vance. And when he was a kid, he was in a band called Jay and the Americans. And Jay and the Americans, great band, New York City, Brooklyn band. And what's significant about those guys was, they were part of the beginnings of it all. I mean, Kenny and his buddies, they were like, singing in the subways. They were like doo-wop guys singing in the subways. And when they got signed, they were produced by Lieber and Stoller. I mean, Lieber and Stoller, for those of you who know your rock and roll history a little bit, I mean, they worked with Elvis Presley, the Drifters, Phil Spector. I mean, they were part of that whole brill building experience, where all the wonderful songwriters came out of, and all those great pop songs of the 50s and 60s. And Kenny was a part of all of that. Kenny opened for the Beatles. Kenny played with the Rolling Stones. So he was right there. He was on Ed Sullivan, Shindig, Hullabaloo. I mean, all of it. and wonderful stories. You're gonna have to talk to him one of these days. And he was walking down the street, and he heard the sound of our band coming out of the basement. We were playing at the bitter end. It's a really small club down in the basement. It's where Bob Dylan used to play, and say no more. And you heard the sound of the band with the saxophone and the piano and the big beat, the echo on the voice and all of that. And he said, "Hey, what's this? This sounds good." Came in, sat down, watched us play. Never met him, never even knew he was there. But I knew that he left with a smile on his face because, like, almost a couple of years later, he called us up with a movie script for Eddie and the Cruisers. He, Kenny had done, Kenny had, in addition to his career as a music artist, he was also got involved with films. He made a film called American Hot Wax, which was the story of Alan Freed, which is an incredible movie. You got to see that.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Kenny recreated those 50s Alan Freed shows in Brooklyn. I mean, just incredible. And one of the great scenes in rock and roll cinema, where they're in the recording studio and the producer comes over, the song's feeling a little flat, and he says, it needs something. We need something. He goes, give me $5 and a domby doobie. Right. And Kenny walks up to the microphone and goes, dum, 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 and he sings Del Vikings Come Go With Me. Right. And all of a sudden everybody starts dancing and the sax player starts wailing. I mean, it's just an incredible scene. In fact, we saw it in a movie theater long before I knew Kenny. And we were on the road and saw it on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. We were doing the same thing on stage. They'd Come Go With Me because I just thought it was so magical.
There was a point, and I saw this in the documentary and one of the band members was crediting this to you. He said, well, John at one point wanted the band to not only be a covers band, wanted the band to do to form their own identity. What was the catalyst for you to saying, we got to do our own songs?
Well, if when we started our band, there was only a couple of rules to picking songs for the band, because where we were from, Rhode Island, although we had so many colleges around and there were tons of clubs to play in, the club owners pretty much wanted you to play the top 40 stuff, which we didn't do. What we did do was we picked out songs that we loved. We picked out songs that we could learn from, and we picked out songs that people may or may not know, but but that had a spirit to them, So we were doing a lot of early rock and roll R&B stuff and just putting our own little twist on it. Because there were bands around our house, like the Jay Giles band, that were doing a similar type of thing, where they would take old R&B songs and they would sort of, take a different approach with them. And that's what we did. And, at a certain point, we knew that in order to move beyond that, we had to turn that stuff into our own songs. So, we started writing songs and colored the songs with the sounds of the 50s and 60s, with the sounds of that. So we always wore our hearts on our sleeve as far as, influences and stuff, So, our songs had the colors of the songs that influenced us early on. And therefore, we were able to sneak them into the set without saying that we wrote them. So after a while, we were doing a whole lot of original material. And I don't think the club owners really realized that that's what we were doing. And I don't even think the fans knew that that's what we were doing. We would just, segue from one thing into the next, and that way we got to play our own songs, and after a while got known for that.
That's genius, man. That's simple yet very genius.
Well, it kept us making $100 a week,
Oh my God. Yeah. When you were approached for the movie, did you write that stuff for the movie?
Some of it I did. We had Kenny brought us the script, and he brought Marty Davidson up to Rhode Island, and the actors came, the guys who were in the film, and Southside Johnny came up, who was also part of the musical team, and also an old friend of ours from the Jersey Shore. They just came to see us playing this. It was like a wild summer night in a Rhode Island bar, down by the beach, and they liked what they saw, and they wanted to use a couple of our songs that had already existed, which was a ballad called Tender Years and another one called Wild Summer Nights. And then they gave me a movie script and said, we want you to write a song called On the Dark Side. And I had no idea what that meant, but that's what I had to go by. It said in the script, it starts out with a classical piano and goes into a classic rock riff, and it's called On the Dark Side. And oh, by the way, it's a hit record. And I'm like, okay.
No pressure.
All right, let's see what we can come up with here. So, we had different musical ideas hanging around that we were developing, and use some of those as part of what we put in the movie.
Instantly recognizable song. I was playing it for my brother Charles last night. He says, "Oh, I remember them." I says, "Well, I'm going to play it. I'm going to play this song. Tell me what it is." And he guessed it right away. And he says, "It's just like this. That's just iconic." Listening to that coming in. And I saw some footage of you. You're on stage, and I'm going, "Oh my God, how does this guy not weigh like 50 pounds from doing that much exercise on stage?" When but you were a younger man then. I haven't seen you lately, so in that way, but. That's a hell of a show. That's pure energy from everyone on stage. That's kooky.
Well, we're old school bar band, and the nature of that music is it's sort of uplifting. It puts a smile on your face. It puts a certain energy in your heart. Makes it. There's something about it. Makes people want to get up and dance. And we're an old school band that they say you got to put 10,000 hours into something to become good at it. We used to play 5, 6, 7 nights a week, 5, 6 sets a night. We did that for like a decade before any of that stuff happened with the record companies and the movies. So we were very used to going out there and giving it our best, 100% of ourselves, because, hey, why not?
It showed it, and all for all the great reasons it showed. I mean, the band was tight. The energy was, man, I've never seen energy like that. Before you answer the Springsteen question, I'm going to read you something.
Sure.
And it's an interesting, I saw this comment from on one of the boards from a Nuclear Suit. He says, the Springsteen thing, I'm sorry, but I don't hear Springsteen on Dark Side. I hear a band heavily influenced by the Jersey sound, which is a conglomeration of tons of styles, including soul, Motown, bar band, rock, and 50s pop rock, which I get what he's saying. What do you say what do you say concerning the Springsteen? Because that's never going to go away, because that's just going to be there. But how do you respond to that? Not the answer, but the Springsteen question.
Well, first of all, he was very supportive of us. Used to, back in the day, used to come play with us all the time when we played down the Jersey Shore. We became friends with all the guys and all the bands, all the guys in the Jukes. In fact, our guitar player, Gary Gramellini, his younger brother, Joel Gramellini, was in the Jukes. He took Stevie Van Zant's place when Steve went to the E Street Band. And so, I mean, there's a camaraderie there that goes beyond what the press, may or may not say about that relationship. And Bruce was always very, very helpful with me as a songwriter. Obviously, he is he's a 1 in a billion talent. Incredibly gifted songwriter, and was so when he was very young. So he was he just helped me out with the thought process of it, and and we loved all the same records. and he loved our band because, we played the music that we all grew up with, like all the cover songs. And like I said, our original songs became colored with our influences. And that's one of the things that those guys did down there as well. Bruce did that with the E Street Band, Steve Van Zandt and Southside Johnny. They colored their songs. Their songs sound like Stax Volt songs, like the old soul band songs, and we wear our influence on our sleeves. I mean, we all grew up with playing blues and stuff in early rock and roll, and the way that those traditions are passed on is like, you listen to the records and you learn what the guy did before you put your own spin on it, and then the guy waiting in line, he hears what you did, and then if you leave the breadcrumbs, then that guy can follow through you back to the roots of what you learned. I just came back from doing a benefit for St. Jude's Hospital, and we did it in the name of Jimmy Jameson, who was a great friend of mine. He was the lead singer of Survivor for so many years, and we were just good buddies. We're on the same label and stuff. And they had it at the Hard Rock, and it's right at the end of Beale Street. And you look down Beale Street, and that's ground zero, man. That's like where it all came together. It's just so small and so humble, but yet still, you can still see the magic of that street. That's where, rock and roll started. I mean, that's where blues and country and soul music and rockabilly and all of that was coming out of every window, and I don't know if you saw the new Elvis movie, but I thought they did a great job of like sort of depicting Beale Street and how, all of those influences all were just sort of coming out of all the windows, and just sort of turning into, just the beautiful history of rock and roll that we have. So I don't know if that answers your Bruce question, but
no, it does. It does. Well, I mean, the thing is, I remember being schooled a little bit. I was in radio. I'd just gotten into radio around that time, and I remember there was an announcer at the radio station, and he says, that's kind of that sound, though. He says, those guys mixed all those elements together, and when you do that, if you're doing it right, that's what it sounds like, And he would, I was heavily into music back then, but I wasn't a journalist yet because I was just getting into radio or a historian in music. So he kind of told, and he was much older than me. He says, that's what happens when you're from there and you mix all that together. And he kept saying, if you're doing it right, it's going to sound a variation of that or something like that. Concerning his
Dark Side, I mean, when I hear Dark Side, it's the most successful song that we've ever had. Probably not the best song I ever wrote, but it just that song just it got on. It took the magic carpet ride.
Did you know? By the way, did you know what after you guys are getting ready to record it? Did you have to present it to him first? How did that work as far as getting that song on the record? He wanted it. He told you the criteria. What happened after that?
Well, I mean, I made a demo and I sent it down, and Marty Davidson really liked it and liked the idea of it, and it, it had that old rock and roll sound. When I hear that, I hear like the echo on the voice, and to me that sounds like Sun Records, like the early rockabilly Sun Records sound. And then when the band kicks in, I hear Mitch riding the Detroit Wheels. I mean, that was my intention. I love Mitch. I mean, done so many shows with him. Another great influence on my band. So I made a demo, and they came up and they saw us play. And when we went in to record it, I had only had one verse. I only wrote one verse for it, and so I said to Southside Johnny, I said, John, I only got one verse. I said, I keep trying to write a second verse, but I can't find it. It doesn't sound right. He goes, sing the same verse twice. He goes, sing it once over the slow part, and sing it over the fast part. And I said, can I do that? He goes, why not? It's a movie. you know, and we never thought we were making a hit record. I mean, we never thought that, you know. We thought we were making songs for a movie with the hopes of getting a record deal and making our own album. You know, I mean, that's what I was thinking when we did it. It was, don't get me wrong, it was fun and it was exciting because, you know, we're a bar band. So someone asking us to, you know, write songs for a motion picture, that's a very different kind of work than what we were used to doing. You know, we were used to writing songs to make people get out of their seats and dance and go buy beer at the bar. You know, it's like that's what we were used to. And, you know, to write for a motion picture was very exciting to us and fun, you know. And so, I mean, that's what we were thinking the whole time. You know,
I remember
we
where I
tried our
was.
best to make the best records we could and write the best songs we could, but we still thought we were making songs for a movie.
That to me, that I remember where I was when I first heard the song. That's how it impacted me. And I always, whenever I interview someone, I always make a point of wanting to tell them that, even though they've heard it, you know, hundreds of times. But I remember where I was. I was, you know, I was in my pretend DJ booth, and the radio was on because I was practicing, and it came on. I went, "What the heck? Holy snapping turtles! What's that?" You know, it's great. I might not have said "Holy snapping turtles." I might not have said "Holy snapping turtles," but I'm saying it now. Anyway, what was your impression of the movie when you saw it? I mean, could you see it objectively? I mean,
I mean, yes and no. I mean, you know, I could see the work. You know, I could see how our work fit in very well to what was up on the screen. I could see that, and I felt, you know, felt good about that. You know, I felt good that it was working. And you know, but for me, it's like kind of like Mr. Ed to me. You know, it's every time, you know, guy opened his mouth, my voice came out. You know, so it was there's a certain believability that I could never have. You know, I mean, you kind of, when you see a movie, it's like you kind of want to believe that the character is who he's saying who he is on the screen. And I could never do that just for obvious reasons. But it's not something that I think I saw it maybe once, twice, tops, you know, just to make sure everything was fitting in there right. And then I just walked away from it because at that point, those songs were songs of my band. And when my band plays, we don't play Eddie and the Cruisers songs. Eddie and the Cruisers played my songs, you know. And you know, when I'm singing Tender Years, the last thing I'm thinking about is a movie.
yeah.
You know, I'm just not thinking about any of that. You know.
I remember Ellen Barkin saying, she said, "Oh, it was like a mess of a movie. I wanted a boss," and she just said it was all thrown together. And I remember my reaction of seeing it. I remember, my God, when Michael's at the end looking at the TV screens, I've got like goosebumps on top of goosebumps. And at the time, I'm really heavily reading up on the Doors, right? Because people are saying he's alive, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. But back then, I was in my early 20s. I was a little more susceptible to stuff like maybe Jimmy Morrison's still alive. But to me, that's like a great ending to a movie. I'm going, well, thank you for at least giving me some breadcrumbs at the end. You know.
Well, you know, it wasn't a big budget film. You know, I mean, that was Marty's forte. I mean, the movie that he made before that was Lords of Flatbush, that starred Henry Winkler and Sylvester Stallone. And that's before Happy Days and the Fonz and before Rocky, obviously. So, you know, he used to take, you know, sort of unknown talent, but talent, you know. And I mean, God, you know, Tom Berenger was in Eddie and the Cruisers, you know. I mean, it's incredible talent in that film. And but that's what he did. He made sort of not big budget films. And, you know, they have a look to them. They have a feel to them. They have a sound to them. They have a certain honesty to it, you know. And I thought he did a pretty good job with it.
Voice of American Sons. was from the movie Cobra, right? It was featured. All of a sudden, does that give you, when that happens, when you start getting success in the movies, do people start going, "Hey, these guys have these guys, their songs are good for movies"? Or
let me see. Sly was in the movie Lords of Flatbush, worked with Marty Davidson. So Sly Stallone was aware of Eddie and the Cruisers, like as it was being made, and just sort of, he liked Marty, and so he had an interest. So when it came out, he liked it. He liked the movie, and he was instrumental in helping to place the soundtrack. And like Dick Clark, he got a kick out of our story. He liked the fact that, well, here's these guys. They've been together all these years, sort of like under the radar, and sort of been stonewalled by the record companies. And all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, they sell like they get some songs in a movie and they sell like 3 million records. He liked that. That's a very Sylvester Stallone story. He could have wrote that story. And so he ended up putting America's Sons, which was on the Tough All Over album. He wanted to use it in Rambo, I found out. And in fact, they flew me out to California. I was on tour with the band down in the South, and they flew me out there and slept in like 2 days. And they brought me into this sound stage. It was like a Quonset hut, and he was doing like little inserts. And I walked in, it was just him in the room, and he had like the bullets on and the headband, and he had his back to me, right? And I had never met him. And like he spun around and he pulled out his dagger. And he started singing, "On the dark side." I'm going, he's Rambo. I don't know he's Rambo. I don't know what Rambo is, right? Because the movie hasn't come out yet. But then he turned around and said, "Man, I love that song." And he was so great to me, And was thinking about using America's Sons for Rambo, but he couldn't get past the words, "Turn the radio on," and thought that maybe he might use it somewhere else. And he ended up using it in Cobra.
that says, Dave Bickler. Yeah, I talked to him about "Eye of the Tiger." Yeah, I talked to him about. He said, "You know what? I've talked to a few people about Sly Stallone, and they always say, so, the guy has a certain loyalty, a certain, like, he's he tries to do the right thing, and I don't know the guy. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard it from a few people, and I'm going, well, that sounds good, man.
It's very true. I mean, I was going to a gig the other day. I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but I was going to a gig the other day. The phone rang. I picked up the phone. It was like, "Hey," it was Sly Stallone. I haven't heard from him in years, right? So, of course, I answered the phone. "Hearts on Fire." Right? It's the song that I sang in Rocky IV. And he's going, "That's right. That's right." He goes, "You did such a great job on that. That was so great." I said, I had the easy part. I just sang the song. You had to run up the mountain,
Yeah.
And it was part of that scene where he's training to fight Drago in Rocky IV. And but he called me up and said, "Hey, my brother Frank's playing down in Atlantic City. I see that you're going to be down there. So why don't you come open the show?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." So we're going to go open the show for Frankie down there. So
Cool.
yeah.
Have you known Frankie? Have you known Frank for a long time?
I know Frank, yeah.
Yeah, but have you known him for a long time, going back?
I knew him back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very talented guy, Frank. Great musician.
Yeah.
And Sly's like, he's Sly. He's like, he's one of the best, ever.
The Rocky IV thing, how'd that happen? How'd the Rocky IV thing happen? He just give you a call?
He called the record company. Record company called me. My wife and I were living in Los Angeles at the time. Guy from the record company called up and said, "Hey, Sly, why don't you come down and sing this song for Rocky IV?" So I went down and never heard it, and put it up in the speakers, and he was there, and he wanted to hear me singing. I said, I don't really know the song. I said, but I think I know what you want. And, so I said, let me try to sing in the chorus. And, I know he wanted that big, raspy scream from the top of your head, bottom of your toes sort of sound. And I did that. And he really liked it. He really liked that song in that film. He used it quite a bit. I mean, it was in that iconic scene of the workout scene. And then it was played over his speech at the end. When he wins the fight, and it played over the credits. But I think it was the 4th or 5th single off of that record. Our buddies in Survivor had Burning Heart. They had #1 with it. James Brown had Living in America. Robert Tepper had No Easy Way Out. So they had 3 top 10 songs before that they even got to mine. But by the time they got to mine, I think they were on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's what happened. We used to say that about Elton John back in the old days when he was releasing 2 albums a year. People would say, well, how come that song, High Flying Bird, wasn't 45? And I go, they were already on to the next album by then. They could only release 1 or 2, and Elton was releasing an album every 6 months anyway, so they're on to the next thing.
Right, sure.
Did you ever splurge? When I mean, obviously that makes for a better living when that kind of stuff happens. So I ask everyone this question. Did you ever splurge did you ever get a big paycheck and go out and buy a Porsche, or what? Are you that kind of guy?
As a matter of fact, no.
Really?
No.
Are you just not wired that way? Would you not do that anyway? Are you more practical?
It's money can do 2 things. Well, money can buy you a Porsche, or it can buy you time to spend with your family. And to me, not that we made that much, because our biggest successes came from movie soundtracks, which the money goes a lot of different ways before it gets to the guy with the guitar, So, we were able to have a little bit of security. We weren't able to retire or to be extravagant, but we had a little bit of security. And, I chose to use money in that fashion as security to make sure we had a roof over our heads, we had health insurance, that my kids had what they needed, and that I had time to coach their baseball teams and be a dad. So I mean that's what that was for.
Good for you, by the way, because as you can imagine, and you've heard those stories as well from your cohorts and your colleagues in general that I hear. I mean, Steve Porcaro, not that he's in this boat, but Steve of Toto once told me, I said, why do you enjoy touring? It's good exercise. I'm doing all the, pro touring things. And he says, well, a lot of musicians, we tour because we want to keep our stuff. And I went, whoa, that was so great. He says, some of musicians I know, he said, they've, when you have a lot of money, you spend a lot of money. He says, not everyone's smart with their money. They say, I've talked to guys who had like 8 Porsches, and I go, I don't know, I would have bought one maybe. There's a brand new Greatest Hits with John Cafferty. If you want to pick it up, there's a link in the description of this video. And 2 P's to help our channel. If you want to help us out, you can join our Patreon and get early access to almost every video we put out. Also, bonus material that will never go on our regular run YouTube channel. It'll never see the light of day unless you're a Patreon member. You can also buy a t-shirt to support the channel or make a donation via PayPal. All the links are in the description. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book.